Welcome to the LowCarbMD podcast. No one is beyond help. No one is beyond hope.
As we have always said, we are bringing you medical information and cutting-edge science, but none of this is medical advice. Please seek out input from your own doctor.
Hello and welcome back to the LowCarbMD podcast. Tro, good to see you, man. We're gonna learn a lot today. I feel that already in my bones that we're gonna have a really good discussion here.
Oh man, I haven't stopped learning since I met him. This is going to be a great one. Okay, this is Dr. Kiltz. I had the pleasure of going on a podcast of his not too long ago, and I went straight to the books after I talked with him, and got me thinking. He has been practicing as an OBGYN, board certified OBGYN. Director of several fertility clinics, absolutely successful in his career, well respected. And I just found out, I just did a chart audit. We have several patients together, which I now realize, because we're both in the New York area, and they all love you, by the way. So I'm excited to have you on. We had a huge conversation off the air talking about the politics of medicine, the regulatory environment of medicine, the pressures on us from insurance companies, pharma, and I was like, we got to talk to this guy and get his message out. And I'm happy you're here. I really am.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. And I enjoyed our conversation last time, and we have to have more of these. And we have to invite more people from our community to learn the approaches that we've learned that are changing the landscape of truth and honesty in healthcare and medicine.
Yeah, does that exist now, truth and honesty?
Well, I think that's what we're working to speak. It's out there. There's always a sort of a story, and it depends what side of the street you're on, in essence. Are you the master or the masses? We're masterly manipulated by the masters to eat the wrong food, which causes us to be controlled and dictated to, and we are going to change it up. And that's what this story is about: how to think and eat the way of an optimal human, so you could take advantage of what I call the temple, the Ferrari, the lioness, and the lion. That's what we really are, not pigs, cows, or sheep. All respect to those pigs, cows, and sheep, though.
I think it's hard for people to wrap this head around. Of course, Gary Taubes, of course, Nina Teicholz, of course, people have taken the story. They've talked about kind of the perversions of science with Ansel Keys and how, the AHA has corporate interests, and how all of this has been basically a bunch of noble lies in nutrition for over, maybe overt lies, maybe noble lies, who knows, for 30 to 50 years. How the hell did we get here?
Well, it's actually 10,000 years. So 3.5 million years ago, we came out of the trees to eat the grass eaters, not to eat the grass. We're not four-legged, long snout, big ears, grass-eating animals. We're hunting animals. We hunt in packs. We learned how to hunt in packs. We created it, and we basically stormed the earth and took it over. But the feeding of plant material by the masters to the masses has essentially given us a control, that we're highly controlled by the addiction to eat carbohydrates. And remember, plants contain controlling chemicals: heroin, caffeine, nicotine, cocaine, and I'll go down the list. They're all drugs that we're addicted to. And when you eat like a pig, cow, and a sheep, then your body and your mind is controlled in that same way. It's kind of a really crazy idea, but in order to control the masses, you feed them plants. And again, it's going on for thousands of years, and our social and cultural nature is how we live. I was raised Italian, Catholic. Everyone is sort of raised in a way, some societal, cultural norm that we are basically led by. And so, but over the last 100 years or more, we've gotten more into the industry of feeding the masses, which is still mostly a plant-based, plant oils, and highly addictive chemicals. And don't eat meat because it's going to cause cancer, which in truth is, if you eat meat, you will become the master and no longer the masses. And so, I mean, ultimately, we're not blaming anyone here, but we have to take responsibility ourselves. The more we focus on they made us do it, we take away the truth is that we are now learning from experts like yourself that we can take control. And that's what this story is really about, how to change the story and the outcomes of our lives.
You know, I don't think people realize, like, they hear this message like, oh, plants control. You know, no animal eats an unripened fruit, right? No animal would go eat the unripened fruit. The plant actually ripens at a certain time. The seeds are ready. In fact, if you eat an unripened fruit and you eat the seeds, you can actually become very sick, but nobody eats it, right? So the plant actually changes its composition, right? It becomes sweet, right? To instigate another animal to eat it, right? Mammalian milk, same thing, right?
The plants are just hanging around saying, here, eat this today. But if you eat me yesterday or tomorrow, you're going to get sick and die. I'm going to cause reproductive dysfunction. I'm going to cause GI dysfunction. And so if you look at your dogs and cats, they eat the grass and they vomit, right? And so we human beings are having that same thing happen, but it's more subtle. Every disease we experience is caused by a high plant-based, low animal food diet. That's really as simple as that. But plants, I mean, every organism, including COVID virus, is infinitesimally so smart. I mean, they know how to reproduce themselves in the globe, and they're going to do everything they can to do that. So they've made chemicals like sugar, but sugar actually is good for us in a very small window in order to eat as much as we can, in order to get fat, to survive the winter, the famine, or the 9 months of gestation without eating, where you're hibernating. So there's some real science here, but we've learned the wrong science, and that's our trouble.
Yeah, it's a foraging signal, you know?
It is, but again, my sense is for the majority of time, we were hunters. Now we've decimated the large animals of the world because we were too good at hunting. And then we developed all sorts of weapons to sort of decimate the herds of the world. And so, you know, it's hard to kill a cow and then eat it. It's easy to kill kale and eat it. But a cow is going to fight you as best it can and prevent you from killing it, where kale can't do much of a fighting job, so they're going to kill you later on.
You know, I think people hear this message and they think, oh, it's way too extreme. This is extreme message. You know, this Dr. Kiltz and, you know, Tro and Brian, and, you know, this is extreme message. But if you look at some of the data, you know, you wonder, how is it that vegetarian and vegan diets are associated with mental health outcomes, weak bones, low muscle mass, right? You wonder these things. And then, like, you come back and you say, well, wait a second, maybe, you know, maybe there's more to this thought. So how did you get here? Because they certainly didn't teach this to you in med school.
Well, again, Italian, born and raised in Los Angeles. I ate everything I could. I had migraines as a child, bowel problems as a child. I sort of grew out of them because I took drugs all the time, but I didn't realize that I was taking all these drugs, which are over the counter, to make my headaches and my bowel problems and arthritis go away. Finally, in my mid 40s, I started looking at mindfulness and meditation and yoga and things like that. And then maybe about 15 years ago, a bunch of my patients were getting pregnant on the paleo diet. And I had no idea what the paleo diet was. So I started reading about it. Then I learned about keto diet. And then I read a book called The World Turned Upside Down by Richard David Feynman, which basically said carbohydrates and sugar is not required in the human diet. And I'm like, okay, now wait a minute. That didn't make sense to me. Then I learned about carnivore, and I did it over 10 years ago, and my bowel bleeding, arthritis, psoriasis, migraines, and kidney stones went away. And I was having so many of my patients, as I talked about paleo and keto, getting pregnant, delivering babies. I realized there must be something to this story. Now, my best friend Dave was a very healthy doctor. He died at 52 of lymphoma, and my sister died of diabetes at age 52. And so I began to dig deep and realized that the story we were taught is wrong. And why are we not sharing this? What are we afraid of? And I realized I went into medicine to help people, but I recognized that what I was taught was actually the cause of their problems. And so I was like, well, why am I doing that? I was actually told by the medical school locally here in Syracuse not to talk about this. And I was actually reported to the state Office of Professional Misconduct for telling a patient to do carnivore and keto. And I just is like, okay, enough is enough. I would rather be kicked out of medicine and be an outcast for telling what I believed and knew was the truth than to tell people the wrong thing that actually is causing all diseases. So I've since gone on to write books about this and do podcasts about this and follow people like yourself who are really sharing the story to help more and more people rather than hurt more and more people.
Yeah, it's remarkable. The time we're in is remarkable. We were talking before we went on. I got banned. My life's best medicine got banned because I had a senior doctor that's been practicing for 50 years talking about what he's seen clinically. And we're talking about leaky gut and gut microbiome. And they said, okay, that's gone. So they locked me out for a month from posting on YouTube because, but I say, well, what's the misinformation? Well, we're not going to tell you what the misinformation is. Oh, well, this is what we're seeing in our clinic. Well, that's misinformation. Well, but we're seeing that. Are we delusional? Explain this to us. So I think it's hard when you get reported for doing what's helping your patients and you're seeing them get better from, cutting out processed foods as if that's going to be dangerous somehow for them.
It is really hard to understand. So I teach at the medical school. I have residents all the time. I tell this story. Every time I get a new student, I tell the same story. And there are a few of them that go like, that's really interesting. I'm going to have to study that. The majority are like, okay, that's wrong, or I get reported. So it is something that, again, I'm a crazy man on this, and I will not stop with this because I've seen pregnancies occur in 44-year young women who we couldn't get eggs out of at all, make the changes, and bingo, it happens even naturally without drugs, without IVF, without surgery. And so I think everyone deserves this story for sure.
What would you say is the biggest cause, that reversible cause of infertility that we can intervene on?
Well, it's diet is number one. And in my book on Kiltz's keto lifestyle, I talk about 5 causes of all disease. So every disease, the causes are not different. Infertility, cancer, hypertension, diabetes, the leading cause is sugar. And glucose comes from every part of a plant. I don't care if it's processed or it's natural and fresh. They contain sugar as the majority of their makeup, which causes chronic glycation. Glycation is rusting and oxidative stress on every nook and cranny of our body. So I would blame it mostly on a healthy, plant-based, complex carbohydrate diet, which ultimately is killing us. And then from there, the plants make chemicals, including estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone, which are basically we're eating our birth control. And then we can't figure out why women have PCOS or metabolic syndrome or prediabetes. And then third is the antigens, lectins, oxalates, phytates, glutens, which all are micronized and distributed throughout our body, which is basically painted or distributed like dust. And that dust causes acute and chronic inflammatory conditions, including in the testicles, the ovaries, the uterus, the prostate, and I'll go down the list. And the fourth, complex carbohydrates ferment in our gut. Basically, bacteria and yeast come with the plants, and in our gut, the small and mostly the large intestine, fermentation. Fermentation makes heat, gas, alcohol, and aldehydes. And the internal temperature of the colon is greater than it should be, basically from the day you're born to the day you die. I mean, my daughter even was fed a soy formula. I didn't understand it or know it at the time. And I will tell you, those are the leading causes of disease. And infertility, again, it's just another long list of diseases, including Alzheimer's, dementia, depression, anxiety, and even suicide, I think are all related to the wrong, I call it, the diet is a bad word. We've got to get rid of diet, right? Most people want to run to the word diet, but we're really talking about what is the optimal human nutritional solution for a human being. And it's not grass, grains, fruit, fiber, vegetables, seeds, or nuts at all.
Yeah, it's the same thought with our animals too. It's not natural. We were talking about kibble and all that stuff. And I'm like, do you think a dog's going to go out and grow corn and go in the cornfield and go crazy and start ripping out wheat and start eating it? No, they're going to go after little mice and birds and whatever they can grab, lizards. You see what they naturally go after, but we've artificially. So I see people online saying, "Oh, my dog's a vegan." I'm like, "Oh, that's going to be not good for the dog down the road. They're not built for that. You don't feed sharks, vegetables. So you're not going to feed a steak to a cow. I mean, you start realizing what's specific to that species."
Absolutely. And interesting enough, lions and wolves are carnivores, but when you feed them grass and grains, they become dogs and cats, domesticated. And so the recognition of domestication is really, really interesting. And the pharaohs, the priests, the popes, the presidents, that basically control the money. And if you've read Nina Tochland and Gary Taubes and all the others, this is an ancient story of control. We know that the Seventh-day Adventist Church and Kellogg's Cornflakes and all these things control very vast businesses of cereals and grains, which are deadly and toxic for all of us.
Well, certainly many of us. Do you think you think there's some omnivores out there? What do you think?
Well, we're either a lion, a pig, or a cow, a carnivore, an omnivore, or an herbivore. Now, it is true we can eat anything. The question is it good for us? And I would say that, again, you may be able to eat a small amount of carbohydrates with a lot of fat in a narrow diet, by the way, not a huge variety. I think that may be okay. And it may be singly variety and spices and no animal fat that is our biggest problem. And then the other is eating like a grazing animal. We should eat one meal a day or less, which is hard to do, less than that, in my opinion. And I think, I personally occasionally eat a French fry fried in duck grease and dipped in sour cream with salt all over it. But it's a simple sugar, which doesn't have as many of the plant antigens and phytochemicals. Now, potatoes contain solanase. Into the Wild, I think the young man that was somewhere in the wild, he ate poisonous potatoes and died. You cannot eat green potatoes. You cannot eat raw potatoes. Or you'll get very sick and die. I think in some way, most of us do understand we have an omnivore tendency, but the more you eat as a carnivore and recognizing that if you have a disease and you're suffering, if you go carnivore, it's a high fat, low to no carbohydrate diet. High protein, high carb diets are deadly. We do not need very many proteins. And from liver disease, a high protein diet is very deadly. And we need to actually move away from that, in my opinion.
Like what you're saying is, high fat diets, with basically utilizing fat as fuel,
Well, fat is the fuel for the mitochondria always, because acetyl-CoA quickly is cleaved off of a long-chain fatty acid. And if you're a severe anorexic or cachectic, you're at risk of dying rapidly because you don't have enough fat to fuel the mitochondria. So you're at risk of death quickly. And so why would your mitochondria use sugar, which has to go through the steps to pyruvate in the cytoplasm, by the way, in order to make acetyl-CoA? And my premise here is that glucose is converted to acetyl-CoA only in the liver, and so are amino acids only in the liver, not in any other cell. And so insulin resistance doesn't exist. Glucose is never the energy for the cell, not even the brain or the muscles. And we never need sugar in our diet ever. We do like it though.
Yeah, well, we certainly know that people can live without glucose. You know, we have many people in our clinic, very low carbohydrate diets and thriving. Certainly, you know, we've seen PCOS reverse, we've seen diabetes reverse, you know, this concept of carbohydrate intolerance, I think, is the other way of looking at it, right? We've seen this reverse, right?
If you think about it, all right, if we're eating 3 meals of carbohydrates a day, how long does it take for the digestive contents to completely go out of your bowels or completely be secreted in the bloodstream? I will claim that it takes days. So that means you're secreting sugar into the bloodstream 24/7, 365. That in and of itself causes hyperinsulinemia, because the function of insulin is in the liver to convert sugar and amino acids to fatty acids. It's doing what it's meant to do. So everyone claims, well, it's insulin resistance, but insulin is doing what it's meant to do. So you and I know that if you fast for a few days, or if you eliminate carbohydrates completely, diabetes type 2 goes away almost completely in everyone. And type 1 often goes away because the antigens that we're consuming in the plants are blocking the islet cells and preventing insulin from either being made and or at the receptor site, but I don't think that's true.
I've yet to see a case of type 1 reverse. We've seen honeymooning for a long time. I'm going to say that I have not seen that. I don't even know if I believe it's possible. You know, maybe I should have more faith, but we've seen long honeymoons. You know, we have a patient right now who came to us with type 1, and she was on 100 units of insulin a day, including her basal and bolus, and now she's on 30, right, on a very low carbohydrate diet. And I'm not sure, I don't know how much more we'll get out of it. Who knows? We'll see where life takes her. But, you know, we definitely saw a 70% reduction in insulin needs. And this isn't even agreed upon by dietitians. They're like, well, no, carbohydrates don't affect glycemia. All calories are equal, you know. So
I believe that simple sugars are better than complex sugars. Because if you eat a simple sugar, it's digested quickly, goes to the liver quickly, and it's converted to fat quickly. Complex sugars take a long time. So that means we're actually exposing the bloodstream and all organs of the body to low levels of sugar over a long period of time. For the last 3.5 million years, we didn't have any significant sugar in our bowels or our bloodstream forever. And so it's just such a hard concept to break away from. If you go on a 0 carbohydrate nutritional plan, all right, your insulin level requirements go way down because you're still eating protein, which requires insulin, but fat has no requirement for insulin at all.
Can I fact check you on that one?
You can fact.
Yeah. So there was a study I just saw, right? I just saw this. So they've done protein dosing studies, and they've shown that basically protein has 1/5 the glycemic excursion of carbohydrates, but it's about, 5 to 8 hours delayed. Actually, they did a fat loading study on type 1 diabetics. You can argue it's not the ideal scenario. It produced about 1/10 the glycemic excursion, probably through glucagon, right? Probably through glucagon. What do you think?
Here's what I'll bet.
Yeah.
I'll bet there isn't one study where they fed them only fat,
It was
or
only
only protein. Okay.
No, they did. They did.
I-
I gotta send this to you. I gotta
I
send.
look at, here's what I know about studies. Okay. A study is usually funded, and when you're funded, you have a reason for doing it. All right. And so look at, we get fat because fat is the only fuel for the mitochondria. Done. And amino acids, especially coming from meat, is the most easily digested food in our GI tract. All right. And so, you know, if you find that person that eats nose to tail, and that's all they consume, you know, that'd be magical. There are rare people that do that anyway. But one of the things I also believe is that medical testing is highly inaccurate. We do know that. And we deal with human embryos that are labeled as abnormal. We transfer them, we get a normal baby. And so I always am suspicious of a medical test that gives us an answer, but we know that the variability of a medical test is humongous, right? And so I'm just a little leery of all of it in one way or another. And I do believe that we're built to go 3 minutes without oxygen, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. But that's really hard to do on all of those things, isn't it?
Those are all a challenge for sure. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of, I think the other thing I think we look at is, you know, really, I mean, William Davis, I just interviewed him. It's really, anyone who hasn't listened is worth listening to. And also I would say right after I did that interview, I also listened to Peter Attia, and I cannot remember who he interviewed, but they were talking about zone 2 training and the benefit of going at a lower glycolytic, like you're avoiding this glycolytic and you're allowing the mitochondria to run on fat purely. And I don't know if it's purely, but for the most part, but it's really intriguing. There's some really intriguing data with this world-class, he trains world-class athletes, the Tour de France guys. And what they find is if they exercise at a low level more frequently, they recruit more mitochondria. So the mitochondria aren't being overburdened and overworked when they have to stress it when they run the mountains. And
well,
yeah,
the more you exercise, the more microvascular development you have, the more oxygen potential carrying capacity of the bloodstream. Lance Armstrong, they were doping in order to add more oxygen carrying capacity. We forget about the simple oxygen shift, right? You gotta give up on oxygen to take on a carbon dioxide and water. And so again, we look at these things and we study them from the scientific approach, from what I believe is the wrong science. All right. If we know, I don't know if you've ever seen a blood test that their lipids and cholesterol was like bottomed out at near zero. Ever seen it? No.
No, I've never seen it.
So why would the mitochondria try to use sugar over acetyl-CoA floating around and from fatty acids that are released like this? The cleavage of a fatty acid bond is so fast, it's happening at light speed. Remember, you and I have been taught that glucose is the primary energy of the cell, but we know that if you look at the metabolic pathways, glucose must become pyruvate in order to become acetyl-CoA. But fatty acids that are just hanging around everywhere, simply you get a pair of scissors and you go like this. So it took me a while to figure this out. My sister dying helped me on this one. God rest her soul, Maria. But liver failure patients are cachectic and skinny. They have no fat. They have insulin and they have glucose, but they don't have a functional liver. But they all become diabetic. Where type 2 diabetics, right? They have a liver, they have insulin, they have sugar, and they get fat because insulin and sugar is doing what it's meant to do. And the third one is type 1 diabetes, where insulin is gone. They become skinny and emaciated, don't they? Because they use up all their fat stores and they cannot make fat. Occam's razor says the simple answer is the one. See, we in science want to have a complicated story, but the universe is really simple. And you probably don't know too much about the glycobiome.
Yeah, you know what? Davis talked about a lot about this, right? You know,
The glycobiome is the most important component of our body. 99% of doctors know nothing about it. William Davis and David Perlmutter helped me a lot on this, but they don't go far enough, in my opinion. Neither does Gundry. They don't go far enough, right? They make like there's some plants are good for you and some that aren't. And I think that the glycobiome is the mucopolysaccharide layer that coats the GI tract, coats the vessels, coats the peritoneal surface, coats the lymphatics, coats the joints between our bones, and basically is a negatively charged sulfated layer that prevents stickiness of microbes and the immunologic markers and molecules in our body. And so it's easily damaged by fiber and sugar, carbohydrates, basically like dissolves like. If I eat a bunch of sugar, I'm going to dissolve the mucopolysaccharide layer. I'm going to expose the gut epithelial cells to the microbes and the white blood cells and the platelets. I'm going to damage the blood vessels. You've heard of phytohemagglutinins. Phytohemagglutinins are plant particles that actually cause blood clots. Lectins are used to actually determine your blood type, right? You add a lectin to your blood, it causes a precipitation, we determine your blood type. We use a potato substrate when we do surgeries to put onto bleeding surfaces to stop blood to prevent bleeding or stop bleeding. And so the stories are immensely simple. We just in science like to make it complicated. That's our biggest conundrum.
yeah, I think there's some interesting studies. If you look at, there's some interesting mouse studies basically showing that fructose and high dose sugars will destroy the gap junctions and tight junctions in the GI tract, right? I mean, this is kind of one of the, baseline of evidence showing that, hey, there is this protective barrier that's disrupted, that potentially is disrupted. Maybe sugars to play, maybe some other things are to play.
Well, even more so, Tro. There's a study I read, I was like dumbfounded by it. But basically what they did is they took mice, because we all know and we say it all the time, when people fail a lifestyle change is when they hit stress, right? So they took these mice, put 30 of them over in Stressville, where there's cats chasing them all the time. They have the adrenaline rush all the time. They loud noises, flashing lights at night. They can't sleep. 30 days of this. The other ones are at Club Med relaxing, whatever mice do to relax and have a good time, soothing music, whatever they got. Then they bring them back together and they give them this drug to cause colitis. Every single one of the stressed out mice gets colitis, and none of the calm mice get colitis. They go, well, that's weird. They go, let's look at their stress hormones. Insulin through the roof, cortisol through the roof, and the other one's fine, happy. And then they looked at the gut microbiome. The stressed out ones screwed up gut microbiome and none of this mucus layer, right, that we're talking about. The other ones, the happy ones, nice mucus layer, diverse microbiome, everything's good. So then what they did is they took some of the microbiome, just the bacteria out of the intestine, out of the sick one, and they gave it to the healthy one. They got colitis. They took it out of the other healthy one and they put it into the sick one and it got healed. And then they said, oh, let's take the healthy ones and give them antibiotics for a week. And they gave them antibiotics for a week. And then they gave them the medicine. They all got colitis. So it really shows that this gut microbiome and the mucus layer are very critical to our health.
I think the gut microbiome is created in an abnormal environment due to the glycobiome being abnormal. And it's not just fructose, it's all carbohydrates that cause the damage. Again, we're not eating one meal a day, we're eating 3 meals a day. So our GI tract is never at rest. And you're right about stress. I mean, we emphasize meditation, prayer, yoga. Be creative. I do pottery and painting, and I write a lot, and I do a lot of things that are creative. We've gotten away from creative things, and now just we're lazing around. And I also think we do too much exercise. We need to slow it down. Too much exercise causes heat, friction, and ultimate damage. And you're not being creative. You're spending most of your time running on a treadmill, which is the same thing as those little mice. And we are not mice. We are lions. And when you feed a mouse, what a mouse probably doesn't eat anyway, in any significance, right? It's going to get all those damaging diseases. But the problem is that we want these studies to tell us the answer. You're going to find both sides of the fence on this one, and that's part of our challenge. And when we're going against the system, I think ultimately people believe you because of the patient stories. Ultimately, human civilization is built on stories. That's why the Bible is like the best read book in the universe. It's a story. The more patients hear about us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, their friends, their neighbors, they say, wow, I had a patient from England today call me because she heard about us through her friends in England. And so I think that what you're doing is the best way to share the story and inspire people to make the changes.
Yeah, I think what we're all doing. I think it's really important. We have to look and observe like Tro and I, it's great having the podcast because we can go back. Because I remember in the first days of this podcast, I said, gosh, darn it, Tro, it's weird. I don't know why. I can't explain it, but the carnivores seem to be happier. Their gut gets better. They're enjoying life more. They don't get as worked up about stuff in general. Right. And in general, too, I've seen vegans, and I don't know why whether it's deficiency in the brain or whether it's being passionate about what you believe, but I've seen a lot of bitterness and suicides and depression and anxiety and all these things go with that. And I'm like, hey, I don't want to cause controversy, but I'm just saying what I'm seeing. Right. And then it did cause controversy because people don't like it, but it's what we're seeing. And sometimes just adding in some eggs to someone's diet will make a difference in their mental functioning and stress levels and all that, because stress is a killer. So walking out stress all the time. BEBBIS plan. What does that stand for?
Bacon, eggs, butter, beef,
ice
cream, and intermittently fasting, and salt. This is the home run solution.
And that's for fertility, right?
It's for everything. Everything.
Ah, nice.
Everything.
We'll have to put a link to that, Tro.
Beavis, I like it.
But you got to make the ice cream. Again, my theory here is protein, amino acids, and sugars digest almost exactly the same. But our diet is mostly consuming carbohydrates, and that's not what our natural dietary habit has been for the last 3.5 million years. But so yeah, it's controversial, but
what's our best approach for those of us who've been overweight our whole life, stressed, and had all these life traumas and chemical exposure and all that stuff? How do we repair our gut microbiome and our mucus layer there?
Well, you want to repair your mind first.
Yes.
Faith first. I personally practice.
See, Tro, I'm not crazy. That's what I've been talking about. People get mad at me. They see I'm right.
I ask all my patients, do you believe in God? Do you have a higher power belief system? And almost everyone says yes. Many of them ask, let's pray, whether they're Jewish, Muslim, or Christian or Hindu, it doesn't matter. And so I always say, you got to start with this thing here. So the stories you're sharing are the inspiration of the mind, right? And if you haven't read, I wrote a book called The Fertile Secret a number of years ago, which is taken off of The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. If you've never read that one, you must. And basically,
how many dang books have you written?
Oh, 5 or 6.
Wow, look at that.
5 or 6.
You're sitting there, look at what you're doing. We're just struggling.
We just sit here yapping, and you
got to go into fertility.
All right, I'm 66. I started seeing my fertility at 41.
That's how old Brian is. Brian's 66.
And I 10 years ago.
I want to check your ID. He doesn't look 60. I need to check your ID.
I'm 66. Get out of here.
I turned 66 last Saturday, and it's a rocking amazing. Look at I don't exercise of any significance. I just went snowboarding for the first time in 8 years at Vail, and I didn't break any bones, thankfully. But I'm mostly inspired by the story we're telling, number one. And the number two is, let's see, Zach Bitter. If you haven't interviewed Zach Bitter, major.
Awesome. One of our favorite guys. He's awesome.
Awesome.
Yeah. He says a couple things. Start where you're at. So you got to love what it is, right? This idea that you got to be skinny is stupid. No man wants skinny. Sorry. Fat is fertile and survives the famine. Skinny is deadly. And so all this idea that you're trying to be skinny is not loving who and what you are. We take care of everyone that shows up. I don't care your size, shape, age, whatever it is, we'll help you where you're at. Motion is motivating. That was the other Zach quote. Basically, you got to move. And, this is moving. I'm in my stand-up desk all day. I'm moving back and forth. I rarely sit down. I lay down and take a nap once or twice a day, plus my 5 or 6 or 7 hours of sleep. I don't know how many it is. But I would say that to inspire people is to be inspired yourself, number one. You got to follow what you're teaching, right? If you're going to teach these ideas, you got to live it. And I would say that I'm living it as much as I can. And literally, I'm doing it because I suffered. And I see you're standing up there.
Oh, yeah. I'm living it, man.
Yeah, we got to.
Yeah, we generally do all the time.
And then, I write all these darn, I'm not selling the thousands of these. I give them away mostly. They're downloadable free on my websites. It's really all of us.
Which is your opus? Which is the book you go, okay, if you got to get one, there's the one to get? Keto. It'll solve everything you ever know. Awesome.
It'll put us out of business.
Yeah, we had too much business. And I think there's too much business. That's what people don't understand. We are, I'm booked out for months. I know Brian, we're all, he's booked out. Like we have these corporations coming to us saying, help our employees. And we can't come, I can't catch up.
But you look at that, how much does fertility treatment cost with all the drugs and all this stuff? It's ridiculous. And you say, let's try lifestyle. Jason Fung talked about that with just doing some fasting. People are getting pregnant with PCOS and everything. So there you go. He's got it right there.
I am the least expensive IVF center in the Americas.
Wow.
And we take care of everyone and anyone, size, shape, age, weight, doesn't matter. And we finance everyone. Again, I went into medicine to help people. I happen to make a lot of money because I'm a holic. And by the way, alcohol is not good for us. Sips from time to time at most, and that's about it. I drink some coffee, mostly water. I love a sparkling mineral water. But I would say that, medicine is too expensive. And so the beauty of this story we're sharing is you control this story, and eating like this is actually less expensive because you save on healthcare. I eat a ribeye steak every day, not the whole thing. And I often eat my ice cream, which is full cream, an egg, a little bit of white sugar, a little bit of vanilla. It's a home run. Now, if you're working,
and I'll add one thing in there. Bill Davis and I were talking about it also. He says, you don't realize how many of these emulsifiers, how much they're damaging that mucocalyx level also, right? Like emulsifiers in your peanut butter or your keto ice cream and all these keto products. And you're looking at like, that's going to cause you some trouble.
Yeah, if it's a packaged product, don't buy it. That's really what I say. Eggs, bacon, cream, cheese is a little bit. And even white chicken, the breast is bad. And fillet of fish, I'm not a big fan of because it's highly contaminated by the waters of the world. Microplastics are everywhere. And generally, we probably hunted big cows for the last 3 million years. We didn't go after little rabbits of any significance.
I think it's hard for people to hear this. Like, it sounds like such a radical message. Like, hey, look, there's some things about plants we didn't really know about. Hey, look, meat and eggs are healthy. Hey, look, there's things happening in the gut that modern medicine doesn't quite understand or maybe ignored willfully. Hey, look, there's severe mental health issues associated with plant-only diets that need to be considered, right? That who knows what the intention of that is or not. But the bottom line is this message sounds radical, but it's not so radical, And when you see so many people get healthy, I think it's so hard to say, well, wait a second, is there, what's going on here?
We should be coaches and cheerleaders. That's what a real physician should be. A healthcare profession needs to learn how to motivate our patients, to be more positive. And hard, it has the most value in life, right? Easy, anyone could sit and watch TV, inject heroin, smoke marijuana, drink alcohol all day. But if you want the very most amazing and the best in your life, oh my God, you can do it. Check your pulse, you're alive, you are capable of anything. And that's what people, need. They need someone to pat them on the back, hold their hand, pull them along. And we're all really doing that together. So that's one of the most valuable and important things we can all do in the healthcare.
Can you talk about the adversity? Because, me and Brian have talked about on this podcast how, there's a lot of physician censoring, physician bullying now, where the medical society said, be careful of misinformation. They send out these emails. They silence us on, people came to me and Brian when we said, hey, wait a second, we're seeing the mental health of people improve on low carb diet. They said you should have your license taken away. And now, the NIH has done studies literally showing that that's the case, but can you talk about how, you've faced, maybe bullying or faced adversity as a physician, regulatory, is there anything you care to talk about, in terms of, the fact that, there are people who don't want us to say certain things. They don't like the way it makes them feel. They don't like the message. And they extract it to somewhere where we're not saying. So what have you faced? Have you faced any adversity? Have you faced any hardship that you're willing to talk about?
Well, I'm being sued by another doctor for sharing the use of a supplement that turns out to be patented. As I look back at the science, I recognize that a lot of it is probably false. So my goal in life is to speak the truth, and it may get me in trouble. But I guess if it's getting me in trouble, it must be something important that I'm saying, and you and I know it's right. So I think ultimately our oath is to the patient, not to the profession in essence. I mean, the profession needs to be made up of honest and honorable people that care about the patient. Our mothers, our fathers, our sisters, our brothers, our cousins, our neighbors, and even our foes alike are our family. And so I have run into this. I have many docs that won't refer to me, and they've said, stop talking about this. But interesting enough, I get calls from other doctors say, I got one of my patients is going to you, and, they tell me all sorts of great things of what you're doing. And how can I help? How can I learn more about this? So I think that, again, anyone can do easy, but sticking to hard and a commitment in healthcare is so critical and important. So I believe that we're seeing the community grow, and you're hanging out with those people and not the others, you'll feel better. And nowadays with this social media, your ability to get out there and share the story and grow word of mouth is greater. They're going to come to you in droves, no matter what anyone else tries to prevent you from sharing.
Can you talk about how you were able to develop, we're so laser focused on, reaching more people. And it has been challenging because insurance companies want to devalue the physician. The hospital systems want to take away the autonomy. How have you been able to deliver better and better care at a lower and basically, you put it out there, you cut the cost in half. So, and quarter. So how do you, this is what I'm struggling with. I feel like I've made a Roadster, and now I'm like, I want to make a Model S. I want to make a Model 3. How do you do that? Like, how do you do that?
I've been doing this for 25 years almost. And so patience and consistency is really the key. Even though there's a mission to sort of knock you off kilter, even when you're knocked off, you need to sort of roll with it and keep moving. That's the part that I practice. I read the Bible or a biblical text or positive text every single day. I read the Quran, the Bhagavad Gita, the New, the Old Testament, or other inspirational books. One of them, this is like one of my favorites. So I'm always reading things from those that have suffered, and suffering is strengthening. And so you just keep on connecting with those that are part of the story and sharing it. And I mean, I never set out to create one of the largest IVF centers in America. I moved upstate New York from California 25 years ago, and I was happy as can be to be in my little spot, taking care of people. But as I focused on doing what I believed in, it just kept on growing, and people would, hey, I want to be part of that. I want to be part of that. I want to help be part of that. And the more we sort of, again, consistency and the purpose is caring for people. And I run a business. I do look at the bottom line, but I never look at how much money we've made or anything like that. It's having faith in the people that work for us and caring for the clients in 100% way. I get a call from someone who feels like they didn't get everything right. So I'm going to do something to help make it right, whatever it takes. And we're not selling a car or clothing or jewelry. It has more value than that, but it's in some way is still a commodity, right? So we have to learn to take care of the clients, the customer, not the patient. I don't call the people I take care of patients, I call them clients. And I work for them, and I'm grateful to work for them. And the more service I can give them, the more value, the more it comes back to me in amazing ways. So I think
that's a universal truth. I mean, you do the right thing and it works out. You go, hey, look, my office manager would get on me. You're doing free biometric testing on people. I'm like, you know what? They're cool people and it doesn't cost. I already paid for the stupid machine. It's sitting there, right? So there's a lot of that where you just throw an extra. You really want to under promise and over provide, right? And I think the other important thing you're saying is, look, we work for our patients. We don't work for other doctors. I'm getting older and gray here on my chin here and all. So I don't really care what other doctors think necessarily. I hope they respect me for what I do. And even if they think I'm crazy for a while, after a while, they go, hey, Brian, what's that you're doing now? They all, it takes time. So I think one of the things I saw somewhere, this is, it's not being right. That's a problem. It's being right too early. So someone like you who's been doing this for 20 years, 20 years ago, no one had any clue about this stuff. So you're out there and they're like, this nutty guy's out there talking about this crazy, eating meat diet that's going to kill everyone, because everyone knew it killed everyone without really knowing.
So again, if you focus on the purpose that you're there for and just keep doing it every day, and imagine every roadblock, every fault and failure is actually part of the growth of the creativity that you're in line to do in life.
Yeah. And I think being on that road to learning, like I've learned, from Bill Davis, from you, all these people around you say, okay, let me be open-minded and look, because Tro, I'm telling you, there's a lot of stuff that we've said that maybe it's working, but by a different mechanism. For instance, we've had debates with people about diet sodas, and, with William Davis, we were talking, and he says, look, it kills off the gut microbiome, causes all these problems, not because of just raising insulin levels or spiking your sugars or, all these things. People are looking at this. There's maybe other problems, like with the emulsifiers and all these other, byproducts that we're ingesting all the time. Like, eat real food and you're going to do better.
keep it simple in life. And again, I have, there's a really great book called The Three Magic Words. That changed my understanding of God. I grew up as Christian Catholic, then became an atheist, and sort of as a scientist and a prospective randomized double-blind placebo-controlled studies. You show it to me, I'll believe it. If not, forget it. And when I read The Three Magic Words, and the three magic words are, I am God. The human brain is the creator of all reality. Simple as that. So and then The Secret by Rhonda Byrne, Thoughts Are Things, and many other people you read from, it'll give you the creativity of your life. And at 41, I was fired from another job. I had no money. I didn't know what to do. I interviewed with some people, and I went to the bank. I wrote a business plan. I started CMY Fertility. And where am I going tomorrow? I have no idea. I just love getting up and being creative and being inspired. I get up at usually 4 o'clock every single day, sometimes 3. I get to the office. I'm almost always the first person here. And I go to bed early every day. And I work to have my one meal a day, and it's almost always steak. I'm very, very, very regimented in what I do. I do occasionally have a cookie, a cake, or my ice cream, but the cookie and cake is rare in this. And I always say you have to treat.
How often do you eat cookie, cake, or ice cream? I'm just curious.
Ice cream probably every other day, but
you're making your own ice cream.
Only my own. It's full cream, an egg, a little bit of white sugar, and a little bit of vanilla. And that's pretty much the only carbohydrate I eat. And then the cake and cookie is maybe every couple of weeks, but a small piece. But I will bet that cookies and cake are better than kale and Brussels sprouts all day long. I'm
gonna tell you, I haven't had ice cream in 5 years. I haven't had a piece of cake. I don't know, maybe well, if it's almond flour, maybe it's sooner, but it's gotta be one time.
Almond flour is deadly. I do not touch almond flour at all. I would say for the last 10,000 years, we ate wheat flour. All right.
I will never eat wheat flour.
In a small amount.
You can't pay me to eat wheat flour.
But almonds contain cyanide. And we've been given fake foods, in my opinion. It's fake. And I would say that in general, a cake or a cookie from time to time, but we've created a world of like, oh, you can never touch that.
I'm not.
Well, I think the other thing that was interesting, and it's come up in the low carb keto carnivore, especially communities, is there's this debate about whether they add honey to it. Some people like freak out if you do, other people freak out if you don't. Well, what's interesting in talking to William Davis about the gut microbiome, he says some of these microbiome, the bacteria there, Akkermansia or something like that, if you don't eat sugar at all, it will start attacking the mucus layer because it's eating that instead of sugar. So sometimes what you're saying is maybe having a little bit here and there helps keep that, from attacking you, basically.
Well, we are omnivores, but as you started off, we only ate fruit in a very narrow time frame, extremely narrow, right? Because it's only right for a short amount of time. And so let's see, William Davis, I think, is working on a probiotic and may get some money from a probiotic company. All respect to him because I love his stuff, but I'm not a fan of probiotics, by the way. I don't think they're necessary. I think
it's like pissing in the wind. I mean, they've done studies on probiotics for obesity, for C. diff. They've done it for, it worsens pancreatitis. I've seen no credible evidence. If you want to, eat some yogurt, go ahead.
Are you saying probiotic or prebiotic?
Probiotic.
But I would.
Man. We'll talk. There's a product out there that my patients have been using recently, and I'm seeing a drop in sugars.
Well, but they're eating sugar.
Well, they're low carb. They're eating some. Yeah, they're eating some probably. Yeah, of course.
Right. And again, it's such a radical concept. Fiber is good for you. There's such good stuff on that I think it's a cause of cancer. And I would say probiotics, If you take care of the glycobiome, and if we really, really understand that the glycobiome is like number one, if you can heal the glycobiome, you'll eliminate a tremendous number of diseases.
So again,
Absolutely.
going back to that question, how would you heal you cut out the garbage stuff, you relax a little bit, you pray, you meditate, you enjoy life, you do your artistic stuff that you enjoy. There's some data that bone broth with the collagen may be helpful in rebuilding, or the green tea with cloves or something like that may be helpful. And anything that you would recommend for your patients who have really messed up? Same, yeah. Go up on your fat intake, eating healthy foods, and doing
One
that
meal a day. But you remember the word garbage, the word healthy foods, it's a marketing term. I mean, people don't know what, I mean, you say healthy lifestyle. Again, these words we use, are wrong. I mean, a McDonald's burger versus a salad. I mean, to me, ultimately the body digests everything and makes muck out of it. It doesn't matter where it came from. If it's mostly plant-based or low animal fat, it's likely damaging. If you switch it around and go to high animal fat, even if you ate some limited plants, but you only ate one time a day and you cook them well to simplify them, you will likely help your your glycobiome significantly. And yes, I agree with bone marrow, bone broth, those things. But rather looking for the drug, the healing mechanism, is if you eliminate carbohydrates altogether and go on at least a 30-day, you will begin to heal. Now, the problem is that once you've healed, people think, oh, I could go back to what I was doing. No way. You should never do it. Or any significance is not good. And I know I've even suffered from time when I've like, oh, I'll try that. Don't do that, especially something spicy. And I grew up cooking spicy stuff, and I sold salsa in medical school. Everyone loved my Mexican stuff, but I can't touch it now. It just like kills me.
Wow. And what about healthy stuff like Impossible burgers and things like that?
Well, so
Beyond.
Why would a human being eat a fake burger? Because the brain wants a burger bad.
Yeah.
It will eat something fake, just like we smoke and inject and drink things we shouldn't be doing. We've made food the amusement park and the party rather than the fuel for the temple to go out and be productive in life. And ultimately, we've just been duped by the healthy lifestyle. And one thing about honey, by the way, I'm not a big fan of honey because it contains a lot of antigens that bees are putting out there. Now, if you pasteurize it, I don't know. I always say, if you're going to eat sugar, make it white sugar cane sugar, a little bit from time to time. And diet drinks are deadly. Again, I go to carbonated a little bit with mineral water, natural mineral water, a little bit of coffee, a little bit of tea. I rarely drink a martini, extra filthy dirty with mostly a ton of olive juice, but rare, like once a month maybe, and a sip. That's all I do. I would say that in general, a glass of wine a day is deadly.
Yeah, I rarely drink wine. Brian, what do you?
All these people are, well, historically I do like wine, so I
enjoy wine, but I
go, I'll cut it. I don't need it, and make it in a special occasion and go and enjoy it every here and there. And
exactly.
I think that's what happens. We get carried away and go, okay, I'm eating low carbs, so I can have wine every night. I can do it's hard because people want to stick to what they used to do. And I think at some point you go, okay, if I want to be healthy, I'm going to have to pay a little bit of a price here. But I think all of us, like when we have a steak, I never go, oh my gosh, I'm having steak, I'm going to be really unhappy about this. Right. I mean, you enjoy it. Go, this is really good. It's really good food. So there's certain things I'll pay money for, and I'll get good steaks. I'm not going to get cheap, not tasting good stuff. So I think it's really, and eating at home is a huge thing, a really huge key. I mean, you're not going to get as good of a meal out as you're going to get at home, because you know what's in it, because they're using all kinds of emulsifiers. I mean, there's actually a really good podcast if anyone's listening. What's it called? the Meat Mafia podcast, but they interview a guy that's in food services, and what they do to our food is astounding. Like they were talking about the restaurants, when you get this nice butter that looks so great, it's all margarine mixed with a bunch of garbage. It's really horrible for you. But we go, oh, that's so good, I'm going to put a bunch of that on my one piece of bread, and then you go, oh, that's not very good, right? There's a lot of stuff that's tricking us out there.
Do you ever wonder why the fattiest meat is actually the most expensive? Wagyu A5 meat is the most expensive, and it's the fattiest because it actually turns out to be the best for us, because it's the fat content that's critical.
I think it just tastes the best, to be honest with you.
It does, but it actually, remember, fat, when you eat it, is an anti-inflammatory in the gut. We actually infuse it to reduce inflammation, to treat our patients. We do a lot of reproductive immunology. We use lots of immune treatments because infertility is an immunologic condition. Heart disease is an immunologic condition. Cancer is an immunologic condition. IBS is an immunologic condition. They're all immunologic conditions that if you eat fat, remember, fat from an animal, oil from a plant, and all oils are industrial products, right? You need an industrial company, but nature makes fat for us to eat and reduce inflammation, protect the glycobiome and the microbiome. And that is really the game changer that I think is so important. So the masters tell us not to eat, tell the masses not to eat meat, don't eat fatty meat for sure, and eat the mush, right? Which controls us to want more mush. And what do they eat? Wagyu A5, best ever.
Yeah, and it's just very interesting, Tro, because I think what we're going to come back to, and I think this is going to be the answer to all this stuff that we argue about with everyone, or you do. I don't argue with people as much as you do.
I don't argue with anybody.
From California.
Everybody loves me.
But
we love
you. But I think we argue calories in, calories out, regarding whether it's all hormonal. But I think if we miss the gut lining and the gut microbiome, we're missing a huge part of the equation, and just realizing how much of an impact it has. I think there's a lot that we're going to, because it really, really, really comes back to satiety. Like if you're having satiety, eating one steak a day, you don't have to be snacking all day, and you're a hostage. So people don't realize. And throw in the reading I'm doing, I'm looking, and if you're eating a lot of processed food, if you've had a lot of stress, if all these things, they interfere with satiety signaling to your brain. So your brain is getting bad information. Like we were talking about bad tests. Our intestines and our communication's off. So once people fast, once they do low carb or keto, they go, oh yeah, I'm not hungry all the time anymore. Like they're free of that. It's a weird thing. But then I think once you go back to it, you want more of it. It's like that alcohol. You have one drink and you can't stop. There's a lot of people like that too,
We know all the addictive drugs, and we know that sugar is one of the addicted chemicals, but sugar has a value for an addiction. The genetic predisposition to get fat is actually the best genes ever created, because it enabled you to get fat to survive the famine. And so we were taught not to eat red meat for sure, because everything else is pretty much lean. And even when you go buy red meat, the markets have trimmed all the fat away. So you're screwed no matter what you do. And I really want to emphasize the glycobiome is the most critical component of our body. And we have to begin to talk about the glycobiome and the glycocalyx, which actually, again, when it's damaged, destroyed, every disease comes about.
Yeah, and as a follow-up on that, and I've seen it clinically now, treating some people who have SIBO and a lot of bacteria or parasites even, and I experience it myself. But sometimes when you treat them, there's something called lipopolysaccharides, LPS, and in Germany, they did a study and they took healthy young athletes, they're college students, life's great, right? And they come in and they're rosy, and they inject them with a little bit of lipopolysaccharide from the gut bacteria, and they all get depressed, anxious, stressed within hours. And you think if that's constantly being leaked into your body and you're fighting this, what about depression, anxiety, stress, and all this stuff we're seeing?
Well, Georgia Ede, if you haven't interviewed her.
Oh, she's great. She's fantastic.
We had her.
Georgia's fantastic. And listen, every single disease we suffer from is due to a healthy lifestyle. The term healthy lifestyle is plant-based, little to no animal fat, preferably plant oils, and exercise. And don't forget the fruit, fiber, seeds, and nuts, which ultimately is our formula for damage and disease, which requires a doctor, drugs, and dissections to heal your problem. And that's really the story we're telling here today, is each one of you, all of us, every human being out there has the control of what goes in here and what goes in here, and then how they want to move this beautiful miracle machine. And so we could share that more and inspire patients. Everything's going to grow from there, and people are going to feel better and get to this. There's always going to be the vegans, the vegetarians, the omnivorians, whatever you want to be. It's always going to exist, right? But we're just calling on all carnivores to come back.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, like you're saying, enjoy life, laugh a little bit. Don't worry about every pound. Don't worry about all the dang stuff. You can't fix the Ukraine. You can't make COVID go away, right? You could just do what you can and help someone next door. Do something nice. Look at positive stuff. Read positive books. Let your brain work a little bit, because we're so distracted. We're so tense. We're so worked up all the time. Just get an overnight stay with your partner, whatever. Just turn off the TV for a night. Whatever it is. I mean, that is such a huge critical part of what we're trying to accomplish here. It's not just about, and I've seen it, Tro, you've seen it too, is that people do a perfect ketogenic diet and they're not losing weight, but they're stressed, they're tense, they're late for every appointment, they're running around, they got all this crazy stuff in life, and they're like overwhelmed constantly. It's like, okay, fix this problem. We got to fix the marriage. We got to fix something. We have to invest in the big picture, not just one aspect of it. Like I say now, it's not the Mediterranean diet, I could tell you, it's the Mediterranean lifestyle. It's all of it. It's not just what they're eating. Go, oh, I'm just going to eat what they eat and everything's going to be fine.
And if we can inspire each and every person to see what they're experiencing actually as a gift, it's all good. It's happening in order to shift where you're going and what you're doing. You're learning something from everything. So our stress, without stress, right? You can't build muscles. You can't build your life and make changes. And I know I've learned it from my life, much stress in my life. But I know a number of people have no stress, and all of them are in the grave. And so stress is built into life. And that's why if you have some faithful and spiritual practice and you walk around with a smile on your face and you connect and share that smile or a hug, and I talk about God, I talk about faith, and I hug people, even with this craziness of COVID. It's like, okay, come on. It's time to move on to the next story.
Amen.
Absolutely.
For me, that human connection.
So where do people find you, Doc? Where do people get a hold of you if they need help with fertility, want help with, reading your books? How do they find you?
Well, CNY Fertility, and you can get our family building guide online, or you get it from Amazon, drkiltz.com. And I share all this craziness as much as I can, unless I'm napping. And that's the best way to get a hold of us and myself. And I do a live every Sunday, 10 a.m. Eastern time, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, CNY Fertility. I answer these questions and go down the list, and I try to do it almost every Sunday. And sometimes I'll do a podcast, or we'll interview someone throughout the week and talk about all these things that are important in life. So we look forward to communicating and sharing with more of like-minded. But if you have an opposite approach, we should all listen and listen to all sides and see how we can make a connection and make some changes to improve all of our lives.
So
Absolutely.
True. Yeah, open discussion and figuring out what's working for you, what works for me. We pick and choose and figure it out, and realize one formula is not going to work for everyone. We have to figure out that person and what's going on with them.
Absolutely. We need to do more of these. I'm really excited.
Hey, I want you on my other podcast. Yeah, for sure. I want to talk about other stuff. Yeah. Thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. I think this will be very helpful for a lot of people.
Well,
for us too.
Pleasure to all.
Tro, do you have any words of wisdom? Any questions from our participants?
No questions, but that's all right. Look, bottom line, I'm happy to be here with both you guys, just to expose myself to different ideas, different thoughts, challenge me to think differently. And we're trying to, provide great care. That's what we're, building this app. We're trying to build practices that help people. All I can say is I'm happy to be here with both of you guys. And thank you, Patreon supporters, for making this podcast happen.